help us to create the impact. Okay. And as you will move to the different kind of layers, definitely the relative value of the business will increase, but the complexity will also increase. Okay. So most of the time what we do is we work on a very small layer, which is the internal layer, which is called as process matrix or reporting efficiency. So we use different type of analytics where we use some simple questions to find the answers of, and we only report to the HR department or we to the HR managers to our findings, and then we take the decisions based on that which impact the HR programs. Okay. But as you will go ahead, which is on the second layer, then the value of this analytics will increase, the impact will enhance, and the stakeholders will move outside the HR department. For example, senior management team in the whole organization. Okay. And they don't look at the analytics just by seeing that how it is good at reporting or answering some simple metrics, but they look at the analytics from the viewpoint that how analytics can actually help them to take some decisions. So for them, it is more like a decision making outcome. And here we move from the efficiency to the effectiveness layer. Okay. And the last one is layer three. Layer three, where we actually look at the stakeholders, which are the top leaders, sometimes the external parties as well. And here they look at the analytics, where we actually use the whole system of people analytics, where they look analytics in from the point of view of a future impact, that how this data analysis can bring some future impact to the organization. Okay. And the value reaches to the highest. But it doesn't mean that you start analytics and you directly move to level three or the outer layer. You may start from something very small, which is the center of this analytics, where you can use this data analysis techniques for simple metrics identification or maybe some reporting purposes. But eventually, when you are comfortable with that, you can move to the outer layers and reach to the top layer where you can actually find the future impact of the organization's different actions using analytics. Okay. And that's how we create the impact using analytics. Now, for this, we have this maturity model that is generally what we use. And here the analytics is divided into four different stages, layers, parts, however you would like to call it. Okay. That comes from descriptive and goes towards the descriptive to prescriptive analytics. Right? Have you seen that before? Have you heard about this four-layer model of analytics? Do you know what descriptive or diagnostic or prescriptive is?
Hi, Deepa. Reshma here. I
Mm-hmm.
didn't know before, but I got to know about this from the webinar.
Mm-hmm. That's very good. So good that you have read the reckoners, because reckoners also have a lot of good information for you to check out. Okay. Now let me explain this, and then there are so many things that we are going to talk about them, because this is the heart of analytics. If you understand these four things better, you can use analytics for multiple different purposes. Okay. Now you can see that this is drawn on the axis of value and difficulty. So as the value will increases, the difficulty also increases, right? But it gives us a lot of insights about that how analytics works. So the first thing is descriptive analytics. Descriptive analytics, as it says, that it describes that what has happened already. Okay. For example, how many number of employees have left the organization in last one quarter. So you can just look at the data, use some descriptive statistics, and find out that what has happened. Now it is not telling you that why it has happened or how it happened, who left, nothing. It just tells you simple numbers, and you can use some simple statistical analysis like finding the average or maybe counting the numbers or some kind of other statistics like median or mode, and it tells that what has happened already. That is called as descriptive analytics. And most of the people are using analytics at this level, which is called as description, where they are reporting the past information into their reports. But still, it is analytics, okay? The second one is diagnostic analytics. So, diagnostic analytics, where you are actually moving one step ahead to find out why. Okay? And here the questions changes. So, instead of asking what has happened, you try to identify that where it has happened, who got impacted, who actually left, which department has highest numbers, which gender has highest numbers. And using these kind of questions, you try to figure out that why has something happened. Okay, so this is about why questions, which is called as diagnostic. Then we move ahead, and analytics can not only help us to look at the past, but we can look at the data patterns, and we can move ahead to see the future or predict the future. That is called as predictive analytics. So predictive analytics help us to find out that what may happen in the future. And it's not something imaginary. It is actually a very data based kind of thing where looking at the data, you can actually find out that what may happen next. For example, if you have the attrition of last 4 quarters, you can use that number to understand that if the same pattern follows, how many number of people will leave in the next quarter. And typically, that is called as predictive analytics. Okay? And how much your prediction is going to be true, that depends on what kind of data you have. Okay. The last one is called as prescriptive analytics. Prescriptive analytics, where it is not only going to tell you the analytical results, I mean, analytical results are not only going to tell you that what may happen next, but it will also give you some suggestions that what you should be doing to prevent something to happen, how we can prevent something. That is called as prescriptive analytics. Okay? And these are the 4 fundamental analytics that works everywhere in all kind of data analysis techniques. You know the interesting fact that these words came from the medical sciences, from the doctor's work. So if you are sick and you go to the doctor, and the way doctor asks the question, the way doctor analyze, the way doctor diagnose and predict that what might happen next, and then give you a prescription of medicine. You might have heard about all these words in the doctor's terminology. That is exactly where these words have came from. And now we have started using that into analytics because we follow exactly the same process as doctor does. Interesting, right? Now, how we can do it? That comes from the statistics. Okay, so because this analytics is actually based on statistical analysis. Statistical analysis means when you have numbers, a lot of data, and you are trying to figure out of those numbers or data. Sometimes these numbers may not only be the data we have, we can have other data sets as well. Like we can have the interview data, we can have exit form data, which is called as qualitative data. In the same way, qualitative data also works in a similar way. So we can use these kind of things, numbers or qualitative data, and then we can find out something out of that using some statistical technical methods. Okay. So for example, when you are using descriptive analytics, where you are looking at the past data to see what has happened, what tools we can use? We can use mean, median, mode, or sometimes sum or count as well, simple statistics, and that help us to understand what has happened already. If you are going for diagnostic analysis, where you are trying to figure out why something has happened, then we use some statistical tools such as standard deviation, correlation, and that help us to understand the relationship between different variables or how the data variables are deviated, and that help us to reach to the cause of that something that happened. Okay. When we use predictive analytics, where we are actually looking at the future or predicting something, generally we use regression analysis. So we can use linear regression or logistic regressions. We can use multivariate regression if we are looking at different regions altogether. So these regression analysis, which is the statistical technique, help us to predict the future. Okay. And when we want to come up with something which is prescriptive analytics, that means what we should be doing, that comes from simple analysis like conjoint analysis or factor analysis. So when we look at the results of this, that help us to find out that what we should be doing to mitigate the risk or to avoid certain situations. Okay. So every single step of this analytics is packed with the statistical analysis techniques. And if we know those techniques, we can actually do that.